This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rebecca Dittman, Liverpool, United Kingdom. Web address mercurialspirit.co.uk. The Adventures of Ulysses by Charles Lamb. Chapter 2. On went the single ship till it came to the island of Aeaea, where Circe, the dreadful daughter of the sun, dwelt. She was deeply skilled in magic, a haughty beauty, and had hair like the sun. The sun was her parent, and begot her and her brother Aeetes, such another as herself, upon Perse, daughter of Oceanus. Here a dispute arose among Ulysses's men, which of them should go ashore to explore the country, for there was a necessity that some should go to procure water and provisions, their stock of both being nigh spent. But their hearts failed them when they called to mind the shocking fate of their fellows whom the Laestrygonians had eaten, and those which the foul Cyclop Polyphemus had crushed between his jaws, which moved them so tenderly in the recollection that they wept. But tears yet supplied any man's wants. This Ulysses knew full well, and dividing his men, all that were left, into two companies, at the head of one of which was himself, and at the head of the other Eurylochus, a man of tried courage, he cast lots which of them should go up into the country, and the lot fell upon Eurylochus and his company, 22 in number, who took their leave, with tears, of Ulysses and his men that stayed, whose eyes wore the same wet badges of weak humanity. For they surely thought never to see these their companions again, but that on every coast where they should come they should find nothing but savages and cannibals. Eurylochus and his party proceeded up the country, till in a dale they descried the house of Circe, built of bright stone, by the roadside. Before her gate lay many beasts, as wolves, lions, leopards, which by her art of wild she had rendered tame. These arose when they saw strangers, and ramped upon their hinder paws, and fawned when Eurylochus and his men, who dreaded the effects of such monstrous kindness, and staying at the gate, they heard the enchantress within, sitting at her loom, singing such strains as suspended all mortal faculties, while she wove a web, subtle and glorious, and of a texture inimitable on earth, as all the housewiferys of the deities are. Strains so ravishingly sweet provoked even the sagest and prudentest heads amongst the party to knock and call at the gate. The shining gate the enchantress opened, and bade them come in and feast. They, unwise, followed, all but Eurylochus, who stayed without the gate, suspicious that some train was laid for them. Being entered, she placed them in chairs of state, and set before them meal and honey, and Smyrna wine, but mixed with baneful drugs of powerful enchantment. When they had eaten of these, and drunk of her cup, she touched them with her charming rod, and straight they were transformed into swine, having the bodies of swine, the bristles and snout and grunting noises of that animal, only they still retained the minds of men, which made them the more to lament their brutish transformation. Having changed them, she shut them up in her sty with many more whom her wicked sorceries had formerly changed, and gave them swine's food, mast and acorns and chestnuts to eat. Eurylochus, who had beheld nothing of these sad changes from where he was stationed without the gate, only instead of his companions that entered, who he thought had all vanished by witchcraft, beheld a herd of swine, hurried back to the ship to give an account of what he had seen. but so frighted and perplexed that he could give no distinct report of anything. Only he remembered a palace, and a woman singing at her work, and gates guarded by lions. But his companions, he said, were all vanished. Then Ulysses, suspecting some foul witchcraft, snatched his sword and his bow, and commanded Eurylochus instantly to lead him to the place. But Eurylochus fell down, and embracing his knees, besought him by the name of a man whom the gods had in their protection not to expose his safety, and the safety of all of them, to certain destruction. "Do thou then stay, Eurylochus," answered Ulysses. "Eat thou and drink in the ship in safety, while I go alone upon this adventure. Necessity, from whose law is no appeal, compels me." So saying, he quitted the ship and went on shore, accompanied by none. None had the hardihood to offer to partake that perilous adventure with him, so much they dreaded the enchantments of the witch. Singly he pursued his journey till he came to the shining gates which stood before her mansion. But when he essayed to put his foot over her threshold, he was suddenly stopped by the apparition of a young man, bearing a golden rod in his hand, who was the god Mercury. He held Ulysses by the wrist to stay his entrance, and "Whither wouldst thou go?" he said. "O thou most erring of the sons of men, knowest thou not that this is the house of the great Circe, where she keeps thy friends in a loathsome sty, changed from the fair forms of men into the detestable and ugly shapes of swine? Art thou prepared to share their fate, from which nothing can ransom thee?" But neither his words nor his coming from heaven could stop the daring foot of Ulysses, whom compassion for the misfortune of his friends had rendered careless of danger, which when the god perceived, he had pity to see valour so misplaced, and gave him the flower of the herb moly, which is sovereign against enchantments. The moly is a small, unsightly root, its virtues little known and in low estimation. The dull shepherd treads on it every day with his clouted shoes, but it bears a small white flower, which is medicinal against charms, blights, mildews, and damps. "Take this in thy hand," said Mercury, "and with it boldly enter her gates. When she shall strike thee with her rod, thinking to change thee, as she has changed thy friends, boldly rush in upon her with thy sword, and extort from her the dreadful oath of the gods, that she will use no enchantments against thee. Then force her to restore thy abused companions." He gave Ulysses the little white flower, and, instructing him how to use it, vanished. When the god was departed, Ulysses with loud knockings beat at the gate of the palace. The shining gates were opened as before, and great Circe with hospitable cheer invited in her guest. She placed him on a throne with more distinction than she had used to his fellows. She mingled wine in a costly bowl, and he drank of it, mixed with those poisonous drugs. When he had drunk, she struck him with her charming rod, and "To thy sty," she cried. "Out, swine, mingle with your companions." But those powerful words were not proof against the preservation which Mercury had given to Ulysses. He remained unchanged, and, as the god had directed him, boldly charged the witch with his sword, as if he meant to take her life, which when she saw, and perceived that her charms were weak against the antidote which Ulysses bore about him, she cried out and bent her knees beneath his sword, embracing his, and said, "Who or what manner of man art thou? Never drank any man before thee of this cup, but he repented it in some brute's form. Thy shape remains unaltered as thy mind. Thou canst be none other than Ulysses, renowned all the world for wisdom, whom the fates have long since decreed that I must love. This haughty bosom bends to thee. O Ithacan, a goddess